So I have been tasked with talking to you about making rapid rehousing work for folks with no or fixed income. I come to this work primarily out of the Washington, D.C. continuum of care, where I worked for the COC lead agency for 8 years, and then worked for the local government at the Department of Human Services, overseeing the Family Services Administration, which includes homeless services as well. You know, when I looked at this, I was like, what? Like, this seems like one of the hardest topics, right, to think about, right? And when we think about the people who we want to help in rapid rehousing, our mind immediately goes to income, right? Income is needed to pay rent, right? So there's no doubt about that. So when we encounter someone and there's no or there's a fixed income, it often leads us in our minds to thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't know what we can do, right? I don't know how we can help if there's no income. But I want to challenge you to get beyond that immediate feeling, right? And to begin to think about what it really takes for people to begin to improve the things that they want to improve in their lives, right? And we all start from somewhere, right? You all didn't get to this place coming with all of the knowledge and the education and the training that you have right now. So if somebody said, you know what this person's going to do? They're going to eventually, right, be the manager of a program serving homeless people or a social worker. There are people who would have said, that's not possible. That person doesn't have what it takes. So I want to just challenge you when you think about the things that you have done in your life and what motivated you to seek a different path. That's the same type of stuff that actually happens with the folks that we serve. Okay, so let's talk about rapid rehousing for a second. Just what is it? How many people at your agency are providing rapid rehousing services? Not the whole room. That's interesting. Are the other folks, are you providing shelter services? Permanent supportive housing? What else? Outreach? Okay, all right. Landlords in the room? Hey, landlords? Property developers? Okay, all right. Just checking to see who's here. A lot of folks who are just here because, maybe they like the title. I don't know. So rapid rehousing is a strategy in which we are trying to quickly end someone's homelessness by helping them find and move into a home in their community. Once people are back in housing, they're in a better position to address other challenges that they may have, right? That can include employment, that can include health challenges, mental health challenges, substance abuse, right? Operating from a stable base helps people deal with those other things. So the core components of a rapid rehousing program are housing identification, as you all know, key component, flexible financial assistance, and case management and services. When we think about who rapid rehousing helps, I think we have, during the years in homeless services, right, been thinking like, well, it works for this population, but it won't work for this population. And it's been found that it works for everyone. So it's for veterans, it's for youth, it's for families, and for individuals, right? So there's not a group necessarily to say that rapid rehousing just doesn't apply to them off the bat, right? Anybody can be served in rapid rehousing. The results of rapid rehousing are pretty clear from all the knowledge, and there's been, lots of research gone into this, but the results are pretty clear nationally. Families are homeless for less time when we rapidly rehouse them. The cost of rehousing them goes down because, as we just saw in Ian's presentation, the longer people are homeless, the more, the higher level of vulnerability they're going to have. No one improves by being in shelter. No one improves by living on the street. So the faster that we can get people into housing, we're going to bring down the cost of housing that person, and we're going to increase the likelihood that they can stay housed into the future. Also, it helps our system become less bottlenecked, right? We talked, you think about, we've all prioritized permanent supportive housing, right? We're all trying to house the most vulnerable folks, right? The people who have been chronically homeless for the longest period of time. But that can create bottlenecks in our system, and using rapid rehousing, particularly if you guys were in Ian's presentation, which I think most of you were, if using kind of those bands, those acuity bands, and looking at who are the people that would be appropriate for rapid rehousing, it's going to help you get those people into housing and out of your other systems faster, right? So that means you're creating new space. So that person who is most vulnerable on the street and can't get into shelter because the people who are there are people who could be rapidly rehoused, that creates a bed for them. So to keep flow happening through your system, it's important that we look at all of the programs we have and that we're using them effectively. So rapid rehousing, if you didn't know, was implemented across the country starting back in 2009 through HPRP funding. It was found to be highly successful and a more cost-effective way of ending homelessness for a wider range of households. So we had very specific kinds of programs, permanent supportive housing. We had transitional housing programs, a lot of them at that time, and they were kind of a very specific population. Rapid rehousing kind of opened the door for folks who didn't necessarily fall into those previously established categories to be able to access housing in their community and end their homelessness. So rapid rehousing interventions have 4 basic ideas. So the first one is real simple. Even though people have additional challenges and service needs, the majority of people experiencing homelessness, it's due to a financial crisis or another type of crisis that led to the loss of that housing. So if we get them back into permanent housing, we're able to help address those barriers. And the other reality is that most of the people who we think about for rapid rehousing are not any different than any other low-income households in our community. And you don't see, of all the low-income households in your community, you're probably not even seeing a third of them come through your homeless program. So what does that tell us, right? People who are low income can maintain housing, right? Right? It's not, they do it all the time. People do it all the time. So our folks that we see are not any different. They may have a little bit fewer resources, or they weren't able to put those resources together in a way that helped them avoid homelessness. Most of them have recently been in permanent housing, and they can return without the need for long-term support services, right? Everybody knows that? Everybody who's homeless doesn't need a case manager, right? Any more so than all of us sitting in this room need a case manager, right? I certainly could use a case manager, right? But I probably wouldn't score high enough to get one, right? So keeping in mind that we want to help people be able to return to housing and be independent in that housing as quickly as possible. So the focus is really upon identifying and building upon the strengths of those folks. As we talked about, remaining homeless for a long time can have a significant negative impact on both adults and children. The longer that they remain homeless, the poorer their outcomes will be in a lot of areas. And when you think about kids in particular, right? Kids who live from place to place or who are in shelter have, much different outcomes in school, right? And their ability to problem solve, and even in their brain development. So the impact of that trauma on brain development, the research is very clear on that. And so the quicker we can get a family back to stability, it's going to be better for all members of that household. And we don't want to have people still remain in what I have always seen as like this graduation plan, right? You have to be in shelter for a certain amount of time, and then you can graduate to the next level, right? It's really not about that, right? The quicker we can get somebody into housing, whether it's been 2 days or 4 months, the better off that family will be. And while access to affordable housing is the most effective way to ensure long-term stability, we all know that there's more demand than there is supply of affordable housing. And so this short-term assistance has really helped people overcome sometimes the initial barriers to resolving their immediate crisis and preventing their return to homelessness. And the emphasis in rapid rehousing, which kind of goes against what we probably have thought our work was as human service professionals, is right not to deliver everything to everybody, right? You do know that some of the challenges that your folks have are things that you are not equipped to even help with. Does everybody know that? Do you know that you're not the fixer of everything? Okay, I do. I know that, right? Right? So we need to focus on what we're good at and helping people connect to the right resources that will assist them in the ways we can. So rapid rehousing is a housing first intervention, right? It's helping people access housing right away without preconditions, right? What are the preconditions we normally put in place for our programs? Sobriety. Wow. I mean, you guys live in Louisiana, right? Like you're like an hour from New Orleans, right? Can you walk around with alcohol here? In public? Okay. So, but we expect the folks that we serve to never participate in that. Never have a good time. Never enjoy the things that are part of the culture, right? So what else? What are the other preconditions we put on people? Income is one, yep. What else? Mental health treatment, participating in mental health treatment, disability, criminal background, right. Right, we often set up some of these barriers ourselves when we claim we're trying to help, right? We also say to get into our program, you have to have 6 months documented clean time, right? Who can document their clean time? Like, I've been thinking about that. How do I document clean time? How does a drug test document 6 months of clean time? And it's a cost, right? Exactly. Right. So the things that we put in place, we can't even accurately measure, right? So we have to remember that when people are experiencing homelessness, right, they're experiencing a crisis, right? And there's a stress response. Anybody here ever gone through any crisis in the last week? Right, yesterday. All right. So keep in mind that when you're experiencing a crisis, right, your body goes into this stress response, right? And it cannot think rationally, right? It thinks about what are my most immediate needs and how am I going to solve them, right? So can you imagine being in a place where tonight I don't know where I'm going to stay? So tonight, if the hotel cancels my reservation, I'm going to be in a state of panic, right? Because I don't have a place to go. So how is that going to affect what happens? I'm not then going to be able to go to dinner and I'm going to be like, oh my God, I got to find a room. I got to find a place to stay, right? So that stress that families and individuals are going through will dominate all of their thinking. And so we have to remember this little Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We all remember that from school, right? Until a person's survival and safety needs are met, that will drive their behavior. So only after they have met those needs can they then focus on what are the higher level decisions that need to be made. So you can see why housing people, right away helps end that stress response and helps them begin to focus on the things that may be larger challenges in their life that they choose to work on. Because we all have challenges that we don't choose to work on, right? Everybody got something, right? That they're like, I'm good with it, right? I could exercise more, but I'm good with it, right? So keeping in mind that the people we work with also have the same choices. So let's just think about housing first and rapid rehousing, the principles. Homelessness is a housing problem. It's not a character problem, right? No one deserves to be homeless, right? So it's not something that person necessarily did or caused, right? It's bad. People make bad choices and those choices have results, but the homelessness is resolved by housing, right? Because I can still have a substance use disorder and be in housing, right? I can still have mental health challenges and be in housing. I can still be low income and be in housing. Permanent housing is a right, and people should be returned to permanent housing quickly and connected to the resources that they need to stay there. And the issues that they face are best addressed once they're permanently housed, and housing is critical. One of the things that the research shows us is that, and this is SSVF data, and SSVF kind of started doing rapid rehousing very early. And the data shows that there's no significant difference in outcomes between people who started with zero income and people who started with a level of income. No significant difference in the outcomes that they get in terms of remaining housed. So you can see how critical it is that there are things that we focus on in terms of how we make our program successful, and income probably has very little to do with that initially. Rapid rehousing does a few things, right? It reduces the length of time someone's homeless, it minimizes the negative impact of that homelessness, and assists people to access resources that can help with their long-term goals, if they choose. I'm not gonna say that enough times, if they choose, right? Because I don't know if have you ever thought about this, the things we do to our clients? Let me just say this. If somebody came knocking on my door, asking me what I did with my money, I already have a husband who does that, right? So it's always looking at my purchases and saying, why? Right? Why? I'm like, why? Because I wanted to, right? So think about that and how we treat people. Rapid rehousing is not going to eliminate poverty, right? When we house someone through rapid rehousing, they are not instantly wealthy, right? And now everything is great and they'll be able to afford everything now long term. It does not assure that people will have affordable housing long term. The majority of low-income households do not have housing that meets the 30% of income criteria, right? No, most of us don't have housing that meets that, right? Most of us are paying a much higher percentage of our income towards our housing costs. And that includes people who are low income are paying sometimes 50 to 70% of their income toward housing, right? So it's not, we can't use these kind of typical standards to look at people who have a lower income or even at ourselves, right? We all have housing that's more affordable at times and less affordable at other times. Rapid rehousing is not going to protect people from the impact of losses in their life or bad choices, right? What do we say it's designed to do? Get people into housing and end their homelessness and provide them with the supports that may be needed for them to stay housed, but they may not stay housed in the same place. When we think about what happens with people, we've all lived in places that at the end of that lease term, we were like, you know what? I'm not sure this is working. I'd like to save a little money. Maybe I'll go live with a family member, right? Or I'll share expenses. But what we want to promote is people not returning to housing. They may at the end of the time decide the place that I lived in during my rapid rehousing services are not a place that I want to stay, and they certainly have that option. So it doesn't eliminate their housing mobility, right? So when you think about the success of your program, really think about rapid rehousing success being measured in terms of return to homelessness, not necessarily I stayed in the same unit beyond my assistance. Does that make sense? All right, so the things that when we think about how we really achieve success in rapid rehousing, I want to focus on 3 key areas. The first is effective landlord engagement. You cannot do this without landlords, right? Everybody clear on that? Do we own housing that we can rent to people? Probably not. So we have to figure out how to engage landlords, how to keep them engaged, and how to work with them effectively. The second strategy is effective case management. And then the third is strategic partnerships. So let's think about landlord engagement, right? When we start our work, we can't help anybody until we identify landlords that are willing to work with us. So one of the very first tasks that we have to take on is really that of housing navigator, right? Housing locator, housing identifier, right? We need to figure out where are the available units in our community and how do we tap into that resource? How do we talk to those landlords and see if they'd be willing to give our clients a chance, right? Figure out what their application procedures are and really talk to them about our program and what it provides. We have to remember though that landlords are not service providers. So we need to be clear in our communication and we need to speak their language. They're not gonna know when you say, well, this person has a VI SPDAT score of 6, right? They're gonna be like, what? Like, what is a VI SPDAT, right? So they're not, you can talk about, hey, our clients have a lot of strengths that we know will make them successful in housing, and talk about the things that landlords wanna know about, keeping in mind they're looking for people who are gonna be good neighbors, right? No one wants to rent to anybody who looks like, oh my God, they're gonna cause so much hassle here that I'm gonna hear from all my other tenants. They want somebody who's gonna take care of the property. They want somebody who maybe can be there long-term, but in the landlord's world, a year lease is long-term, right? They expect a certain amount of turnover, and they only rent their unit a year at a time, right? If that. Sometimes people do much less than that. So we have to remember that long-term doesn't mean this person's gonna live here for the next 20 years. It means that they're gonna fulfill the term of this lease. And they're looking for on-time rental payments, probably more than anything. They're looking for, hey, can I be guaranteed that I'm gonna get the rent on time? So that includes even the rent portions that we have to pay. Because a lot of times, the client may be paying their portion, but our agency portion is a little late because we didn't get our check in, right, from LHA, or we're waiting on a funder. So we need to make sure that we're also paying our rent on time. It keeps landlords engaged with us. We need to be in a constant recruitment phase for landlords. So when you go out, right, and you're in other situations, you're gonna run into people who own property, right? And when you find that out, it's perfectly okay. Hey, for my job, we look for people who own property to help us with housing some of our clients, right? Share your information. Make connections with those landlords, right? Because you're gonna find, I found landlords in the weirdest places, right? You know, the grocery stores, the standing in line at the Staples, right? Because I needed to make copies. And there was a person standing in front of me who was a landlord, had 3 units. I'm like, hey, in my job, we help people find housing. Can I send some folks over to you, right? And we end up housing in all the vacancies they had at that point. Remind people that you have strong supportive services, right? And you maintain continuous contact with the landlords. So we maintain contact with our clients, but the landlord's also our customer, right? And they really want to have somebody who they can reach out to. And yes, your job is to advocate for the client, helping that client understand what they need to have or to do to stay housed is really an important part of advocacy. There are things that people will do in units that will cause the landlord to want to say, oh, I don't want to rent to them anymore. I'm going to file an eviction. That's where we step in, right? And we can say, you know what, we're going to work really closely with this person. Can you give us a couple months to do that? Build and maintain your inventory, right? Talk to people, get them on board with your program, right? So that you can continue to use them. We have landlords at an agency I'm working with in DC where he's very exclusively like, I'm only going to rent my units to your rapid rehousing clients. And he has, I want to say 26 properties. He's even like choosing us over Section 8 vouchers, right? Because of the support. He was like, my Section 8 clients don't come with that level of support. Figure out what your landlords need, what's going to help them be comfortable, maintain communication, and then also use diverse methods of recruitment. That has to be our number one job. We can't do anything else to help people resolve their homelessness until we help them get into a unit, because they're still going to be homeless until they're in a unit. So think about the methods in which you recruit. All right, any questions on landlord engagement? Yes. The question was, landlords are like tax credit properties who have an income requirement. How do we get past that? So sometimes it's a little bit of negotiation, right? And we have some landlords who are willing to consider, now I don't know if this is right with the tax credit people, so I'm not gonna say names, but who will consider the value of the assistance, in that calculation. And then we have some who won't, right? And it means we just have to keep looking, right? We have to keep moving forward. And if there are lists for those properties, certainly helping our folks get on that waiting list, because maybe if we can house them somewhere that's not gonna have that income requirement, it can help them get ready to be housed in that other environment eventually. So that's kind of how we get by. It's, it's landlord by landlord. It's property manager by property manager, and what they're willing to do and how committed they are. We have a lot of landlords who are very committed to helping address this problem, and so they're willing to figure out what things they can do to help. So let's talk about case management, right? And I asked for the landlord questions first because this is my favorite topic right here, case management. So keeping in mind that in case management, we want to make sure that our services are flexible and that they're individualized, right? So I don't need the same things that Laura needs from a case manager. So I need my case manager to not come in with a plan already written, right, and a script that says, these are the things you're going to work on because I decided, or because all my clients have these needs, right? Even if we have the same need, we both need mental health treatment. Her mental health challenges are going to be different than mine. They're going to manifest in different ways. And so the supports that I'm going to need are not the same as the supports that she needs. So it's important that we really focus on who we're serving and recognize that our actions need to be guided by that person and by the connections that we build, starting with the very first meeting, right? Our first meeting is when we lay out, this is what we're able to support you with, right? And I always want to say, it's support. It's not, these are all things we can support you with. It's not all things we can do for you, right? So think about your language. Set expectations that indicate that person is the driver of their life, and we're here to help smooth the road. So if there's things that we can do, if you're on a path, what I can do is troubleshoot and make sure let you know where the potholes are, right? So that you're not coming upon those blind, right? That's how I'm gonna make your path easier to getting to your goal. Our opportunity when we first meet with people is to, we always talk about, we want, to hold our clients accountable, right? Do you guys use that term? Nobody wants to admit to it right now because I'm about to say, yeah, okay. So we always look at accountability as kind of a one-way street, right? The client needs to, if they say they're gonna meet with us at this time, they need to do it. But we don't hesitate to say, oh, you know what, we got a staff meeting at that time, let me cancel my client. So we hold them accountable to things that we don't hold ourselves accountable to. And we also don't give them an opportunity to hold us accountable. So part of setting expectations means outlining the things that you're going to do for the person or do with the person. If I say I'm gonna meet you at a certain time, I'm gonna do everything I can to keep that appointment, right? And that's all I ask from you, is that you do everything you can. Stuff's gonna happen. Emergencies are gonna come up, kids are gonna be sick, yours and mine. And so we may need to make some changes, but we can commit to always communicating with each other about that, right? And letting your client know that if ever you feel like I'm not doing what I said I was going to do, that you hold me accountable to that, right? That you let me know. Because it makes no sense to show up to somebody's house for a required visit, right? Because we all have to have required visits to get paid, and have nothing to offer the person when I get there, right? So think about your services as being, you're not just coming around to talk with people, right? You're coming around to help them with achieving the things that they want to do in their lives. So set the expectations about what you both are going to mutually commit to right in that first meeting, and model a bias toward action. One of the things I've been working on with some of my clients at home is really about saying to the person when you first meet them, tell me what you want to get done in the next 30 days, right? Big or small. In the next 30 days, what can we focus on, right? And it might be something that we think is kind of not important. I want to take my kids to the fair, right? So if you help me figure out how I can take my kids to the fair, I'm going to trust you, right? I'm going to believe this is what you said you do. You help me figure it out. Happens, free tickets came to our agency, right? Here we go. Let me bring you these tickets so that you can get your kids to the fair. What's that do? Build rapport, build goodwill, right? So don't start out with, I'm going to get you back on your meds, right? Right? Because guess what? I don't want to be back on my meds, right? And so guess what happens? I'm not opening the door for you because that's what you're coming to talk about. So establish some trust, right? And I'm very big about this because in my life, my husband has a disability, and we are clients, right? There is a case manager assigned to him, right? And so I have high expectations for that case manager, right? And I am like holding them accountable because I'm like, hello, you said this is what was going to happen, right? And we've been on the receiving end of very bad service. And so I always want to make sure that I'm helping people understand what that feels like. And I know you all have had that. You all have had very bad service when you expected something different. So my husband had a stroke, and he, about 8 years ago, and we've been trying to kind of work at getting him back to work, right? Not full time, just a couple days a week. So we went through our state rehabilitation agency, where they put him through unnecessary assessments, right? Where literally the lady didn't read his file before she met with him. He spent 2 days in assessment, and at the end she said to me, hey, I got some questions. And I was like, okay, what? She was like, I gave him this task to write a paragraph, and he wrote gibberish. And I was like, yeah, because he had a stroke. So yeah, I'm like, did you read the file? She's like, oh no, I didn't get a chance to read the file. But we really literally went through a period of probably 4 years of okay, I'm going to re-engage with them. I'm going to give them a try. And figuring out 2 months later that I can't do it. We can't do it, right? They're non-responsive. The worker changed. No one told us. They moved their location, right? Nobody told us, right? And then the worker has the nerve to say to me, why didn't you call sooner? So we always want to model a bias toward action. We always want to do what we say we're going to do. We want to be there when we say we're going to be there. And we want to help people achieve the things that are really important to them, and not maybe things that are important to us, right? Because if you think about it, we're going to get to the stuff that is important to us eventually if we can build trust. Our relationship has to be one of support, right, and not judgment. I was sitting in a case review meeting just the other day, and the case manager was describing her client, and I said, well, we were like, can you tell us what the client's strengths are? And she literally struggled, right? And then she said, well, it's really hard because she has no morals or values. I don't know who we are to judge someone's morals and values, right? That's not our role. You can see that she, was talked to very strongly afterwards. But, that's not our role. We may have opinions, right? I recognize that all the people that you work with, you don't like them. They're not people that if somebody didn't pay me to come over here, I would just be hanging out with. I mean, we are people, right? We're people, they're people. We don't always click with everybody, right? But we have a responsibility to not let people know that, to do our job in the same way, whether we like them or don't like them, because we're not actually paying you to like them. We're paying you to do certain things and to be supportive of them in their lives. And your personal opinions about them, save that for your friends. Look, let's be honest. All the people that work in your office, you don't like them. But you go to work, right? You sit next to them. You have lunch with them, right? Right? You do all that, right? You mad when they talk to you, right? But you do it because that's what you're there to do. That's the expectation. So it's no different with our clients. We need to also be non-traditional in our services, right? So yes, your agency has a case management model and it says that this is the steps you all follow. But there are some clients where it's like, you know what, that's not gonna work. We gotta get right to this action because that's what's really important to that person in their lives. This is where I'm also gonna just add my own little preference. I'm just tell you right now, I'm not really the best social worker in the world, right? Let me be honest. Mostly because in the work that I do, I like to stay in the present. So yes, bad things happen to you before in your life. Yes, bad things happened to me before in my life, but what do we got to get done now, right? So I don't need to explore your childhood. I don't need to understand what happened to you in foster care. I don't need to understand all of those things to figure out what are the steps we need to take now to achieve your goals. So I don't spend a lot of time talking to people about the past, right? I spend my time talking about the future. And so in the future, what are we going to do? Well, this happened in the past. So what are we going to do in the future to prevent that from happening again? So stay focused, right? Yes, it's wonderful to write your biopsychosocial, right? To do all the lovely social work tasks. That's all beautiful. But is it helping that person achieve their goals today? When you think about the services that you provide and how you can be most helpful to someone, it's really about where do they want to go now, right? And how do I help them get there? Prepare your staff to fill multiple roles in rapid rehousing, right? It's not the straight, it's not shelter case management, right? Where all the folks are here and they have a set time that they come meet with me and we do their biopsychosocial and we make a service plan and it basically says they're gonna get out of shelter, right? This is their goal, to apply for permanent supportive housing or to apply for rapid rehousing, or we're gonna do their VI SPDAT so that we can get them on the priority list, right? It's a little bit different, right? It's sometimes chasing people down, right? And figuring out, where are you right now? I can be there in 10 minutes if I need to be there to help you. And so being very focused on the multiple roles that you have to fulfill, being a housing navigator, train your staff in negotiation skills, right? If they're not prepared to have a conversation with the landlord about how we get this rent a little bit lower, right? We gotta do some training for them on that. Because those are the roles that are a little bit different than our traditional case management models in rapid rehousing. Remember that the customer service standards that we have apply to our landlords, right? A landlord shouldn't have to call you 3 times before they get a call back, right? They should be able to call you and you provide what you said you were gonna provide when you negotiated this arrangement, that you were gonna be there if things were not going right or if they had a question. And so making sure that you get back to them right away. They have a way to communicate with you immediately and get a response. That's great. You also have to be a problem solver because the challenges that people are going to face in rapid rehousing are going to be different than maybe what you've seen before. So you have to always remember to be strength and solution focused and really know your community's resources. And I don't mean have the book, right? And the book says that if you need food, you go to the food category and here's all the places that provide food. But really know those resources. Get out there, go see them. Know what it takes to interact with that particular service, right? Know what you need to do to smooth the way. Because there are some places that people go to, and the folks that are there, not very nice when you first show up. You walk in, and if you don't get past, Miss Emma, right? You're not getting nothing. So, know that, you got to figure out a way to be nice to Miss Emma so that when you take your clients there, they get the service that they need, right? So keep in mind, one of the other providers that we have in DC, one of the things they do when they have new staff is they set up a scavenger hunt, right? And that's how people learn the resources, is that they take 2 days and say, this is your task for today. Figure out you're a person who needs to get a shower, needs to get food access, and have them go and try to do those things. Because that will teach you so much about how resources are accessed and available in your community, right? By doing it, by knowing. Because you also lose your client's attention when you give them resources that don't work out, right? When you give them place and they go there and it's closed, or they're only open on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 7, and you sent them there at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, they come back and they're distrustful of you because you wasted their time by not knowing. So know your community resources. Building rapport, right? I think I've talked a lot about building rapport, but this is so key, right? If you have clients who don't believe in your programming, then guess what? They just only want the subsidy. I made a call on behalf of a client that I have, an agency. They got assigned new clients. Program manager was out on vacation, so I was like, I'm gonna call and make the introductory calls, right? And I called, and people hadn't been informed of the change in service provider. That was the first thing. So they were very upset about why I was calling them to say, they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I am so sorry that you were not informed. They've transitioned your services to our agency. I'm calling just to introduce us and to give you an idea of what you can expect from us. And when I did my spiel, and the one lady said, well, let me just tell you, just by making this phone call, you're already 100 times better than my previous agency. And I'm like, I said, and if we're ever not 100 times better than your previous agency, I need you to call me back. If we're not delivering to you what you need, then we're not doing you any good, and so you need to tell us so that I can fix that. Avoid power struggles, right? The person that you're serving is in charge. And we say this, right? We're like, no, we don't get into the back and forth, but we do, right? Because we hold resources, right? We withhold things based on people's behavior. Not you guys, though. Okay, so other people withhold things based on people's behavior, right? Something comes in, it's great, like tickets to the fair, and we decide, oh, I'm gonna give it to this person because basically we like their behavior, or we like them, and we don't like our other clients. So pay attention, right? Make sure you serve people, make sure you're fair, and that you're accountable to people. All right, so let's be clear. When we house people who have zero income or fixed income, it becomes very challenging to meet all of their needs. And so I need to tell you right now, you cannot do it by yourself. You cannot. Your program is not the end-all, be-all of the whole world. And if you just come to us, all your problems are solved. I mean, unless you got winning lottery tickets that you're handing out. In that case, I would like to sign up for services. So keep in mind, who are the partners that you need? And if you have clients who have no income or have a fixed income, then your employment services programs, your jobs programs, public benefits agencies are going to be top of the list in terms of partnerships that you need to have so that it's not so challenging, number one, for your clients to get access to those services, but also so that you can really achieve the goal that we all have, which is for people to stay housed, right? But you can't do it all. You cannot be the mental health provider. You cannot give all the jobs out. You cannot ensure this unless you establish these strategic partnerships, right? So that you're paving the way for your clients to be able to get the services that they need that are gonna help them stay housed. And I'm gonna focus right now on income. So a lot of times when people are experiencing homelessness, as we talked before, they have a lot of difficulty focusing on what the next step is, right? Like, I need to get a job, but anybody who's ever looked for a job knows that can sometimes be challenging and a little disappointing, right? Because we don't always get the first job we apply for, right? And we don't always understand why, or the second. And so we have to understand that engaging in that process takes a lot out of people, especially if they didn't feel like they may be up to the task anyway. And so it's up to us to really build people's confidence and to help them understand the process that they go through. And knowing, let's connect you with these people so that they can help you with understanding how to complete the application or what to say during an interview or how to tailor your resume to meet this specific job's criteria, right? So there are not any things that are different than what we do, but we need to be able to connect people to the right support because we all have that person or place we go to when our resume needs to be updated, right? We all have that person who we're like, can you look at this for me and tell me what needs to change, right? Our clients need that too, right? So help them in that way and help them make the connections. Mental health supports. Everybody knows that it's very challenging to be a person who has to say, I need help, right? When I'm struggling with, things that are emotional for me, that are, how I feel, right, are a result of trauma that I experienced, right? It's really hard to think about how I get help for that. And so we have to really be very careful and recognize that building rapport before we start talking to somebody about getting mental health treatment is really important, right? Because if you walked in my house, right, and said, you know what, Michelle, I think you need to really get on some medications. Again, you won't be standing there for very long, and you won't ever get back in again. We all need mental health support from time to time, right? We get it in various ways, but it's always there, right? There's always something that people struggle with. And so we need to help them be able to share that if that's what they choose to do, and connect to the resource that's going to work for them at the time that it's going to work for them. So it's not that because we've identified the issue that they're ready now to go, sign up and see a counselor and have a mental health worker. It may be that they're acknowledging that, something is going on with me, and I'm not quite sure what to do about it, but I'm not really ready to go tell my story to somebody else. The last thing I was thinking about strategic partnerships are really figuring out who in your community provides services. And these are outside of the traditional homeless systems, right? And the best place to learn this is from your existing clients. When there's resources available in the community, your clients know it. And so listening to them and understanding hey, how did you get that assistance, right? And they'll tell you, I talked to this person at my church and they said for me to go over here. That's the best information. Write that down, okay, right? And call over there and say, hey, I have a client who was helped by you. Can you explain to me a little bit more about what you do? And is this a resource that I can give to my other clients? So figure out what's available in your community. Help your clients connect to the people around them. One of the things I always say, my husband is, as I told you, he had disability, and clearly we had some difficulty with him going back to work. But one of the things I would say is that in our complex, right, we live in a condo complex, people know him that, look at me crazy when I'm walking our dog. They're like, who are you and why are you with Pink, right? Because where's Ken, right? And so he has relationships in that community that exist outside of me that I don't even know about, right? And there are people there who he helps, right? That I don't know about. And people come to me all the time and say, he was so helpful. He was walking and he saw me struggling, so he brought his cart and he helped me bring my groceries to the door, right? So help people establish relationships in their community, because those folks might be the people who will help us one day, right? So it's very important that we know our communities and help people really figure out how to become connected again. Because when people experience homelessness, they're disconnected. Right? They're disconnected from all the people that they know who support them in their life, all the people who watch their kids for them, right? So help them reestablish those connections. All right. We are at the wrap up. You guys are extremely quiet. I don't know. Questions? Yes.
Do you see any actions, suggestions for the siloism that gets in the way of people being able to work more readily with the programs? In other words, this one does this, that one does that. We've had that for 40 years, 50 years. Do you see anything happening? We've had a talk for 20, 25 years about breaking down silos, cross, blah, 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 whatever. What do you see?
Yeah, I really see that those kind of traditional kind of structures that we have are breaking down, but I think they're breaking down primarily because you have folks like us in this room who are challenging those, right? Who are saying, you know what, it doesn't make sense. We can't I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm going to use the ID thing, right? When you're trying to help somebody get an ID, but they don't have the birth certificate or they don't have a Social Security card, and you can't get the Social Security card without the birth certificate or ID, and you can't get the birth certificate without, right? Those are the things that it takes people like us saying, this is a problem, this is a barrier in how our systems operate, to make these changes, to begin to get the person who issues the IDs to accept verification from the homeless provider that this person is who they say they are, and can give them an ID that they can work with. So I think that those are the kinds of things that we have to challenge, and I think that's part of our work, is to say when the systems don't work for someone, to really say, we need to change this. This is keeping people from accessing housing. This is keeping people from getting off the street. And I think the other side of that is if we operate those systems and we have these kind of unnecessary barriers, that we have to change those, right? What does it really take? How can we help someone get an apartment without us having a copy of their ID, right? Is it possible? So think about the barriers that we put in place, and can we remove those and make it easier for people as well?